Let's move on to Tucker. His big interview with Putin. I think, when is it dropping, today or tomorrow?
It is alleged. Nobody knows.
Okay.
It has been foretold by the Russians that it will be happening tonight at 6 p.m.
All right.
Yeah.
So listen, whatever you think about Tucker Carlson, the reaction to this has been completely insane, including there's some EU politician, diplomats, whatever you want to call them now, who are floating that he should be sanctioned and banned from the EU. Put this up on the screen. This is from Newsweek. This is the second element, guys, that we have here, E3. Tucker Carlson could face sanctions over the Putin interview. One European diplomatic official who didn't wish to be named, as they were not authorized to speak publicly, told Newsweek any future travel restrictions would likely require proof he is linked to Moscow's aggression, something that is absent or hard to prove. So they're saying it's kind of a long shot that this would actually come through. But the same person who says it's a long shot says that they support it.
Yes.
They agree with the stance. Quote, he's no longer a newsman but a propagandist for the most heinous regime on European soil and the one which is most dangerous to our peace and security. This diplomat said to the Newsweek of Carlson. At the same time, Hillary Clinton weighing in on her thoughts on the whole situation. Let's take a listen to that.
He's like a puppy dog. You know, he somehow has, after having been fired from so many outlets in the United States, I would not be surprised if he emerges with a contract with an outlet, because he is a useful idiot. He says things that are not true. He parrots Vladimir Putin's pack of lies about Ukraine. So I don't see why Putin wouldn't give him an interview, because through him, he can, continue to lie about what his, objectives are in Ukraine and what he expects to see happen. It's really quite sad that not just somebody like Tucker Carlson, who has, as I said, been fired so many times because he seems unable to, correlate his reporting with the truth, but also because it's a sign that there are people in this country right now who are like a fifth column for Vladimir Putin. And why? I don't know. I mean, why are certain Republicans throwing their lot in? Why are, other Americans basically believing Putin? Why did Trump believe Putin more than our 11 intelligence agencies?
I don't know. Do you have a working theory on
I do
that?
have a working theory.
So, I mean, it's just...
She's still on Russia. It's at the
insane.
end, the both of them, too. They're still on it.
And she just lets that all go, of course.
Come on.
Yes. And listen, I mean, my first thing with all of this is the interview hasn't even happened yet.
I know.
Wait? Like, for people on both, like the people who are like, this is going to be amazing, and the people who are like, this is terrible. It's like, could we just wait and judge the interview?
I could not.
Number
I
one.
could not agree with you more.
But that being said, even if it's complete propaganda, which I think is very possible, if not probable, if not likely, we hear the U.S. Western propaganda all the time. You know what? It's a benefit to hear the other side propaganda too and understand their perspective, how they're spinning it to their population. So even if it's 100% propaganda, then it still is a good thing for the American population to hear what the Russians are saying and how they are explaining this conflict in their position. Even that would be beneficial.
I'm glad you said that, because that's basically what I was going to pick up on. Everyone's like, so first of all, they're like, well, he has to challenge him or otherwise it's not real. I'm like, yeah, you guys been slobbering over Zelensky for the last 2 years. Anne Applebaum, literally with tears in her eyes, talking about the goddamn hero of democracy. I just watched a clip of a CNN reporter literally nearly in tears talking with Zelensky. So shut up about propaganda, number one. You people have been the propagandists in this war from the beginning. Number two, as you said. Now, look, I hope that Tucker actually does challenge him on a couple of things. Number one is the detention of the American journalist, Evan Gersovich, who is currently in prison unjustifiably and needs to be released. I will be very disappointed if he doesn't bring that up, but maybe it was a precondition or something like that. I personally would not have agreed to that. We'll see. As you said, the literal thing is not aired yet. Two is on the justification. I'll be like, you said you're doing this to make Russia safer. Now, listen, I don't agree that the United States should be all that involved. That said, you've killed 300,000 of your men. Maybe more of the people here. How do you sleep at night? What do you tell those moms who lost their sons and daughters who were there? What's the justification? I want to hear that. But then, even if it wasn't challenging, as you said, okay, so I have been subjected to the biggest Ukrainian psyop of war in my lifetime since Iraq. Yeah, I want to hear a little bit of what the other side is. I'm a fully functioning, capable adult who can see Putin talking about the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk and be like, that's bullshit. That's not actually what happened. Many people can do that too. So if we're subjected to our own propaganda, for Ukrainian propaganda now for over 2 years, a little bit of Russian propaganda ain't gonna hurt anybody. If anything, it's just going to be in the mix, and people who already agree or disagree or whatever will likely fall on that side. The other thing is that you have to be able to understand the goals and the impetus of what they are saying. And that's part of the other thing where on the history and all of that, Putin speaks as a Russian czar, as I just referenced the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. How many people who have a strong opinion, even here in Washington, can even tell you about the independence of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, the historical Soviet Empire? I don't agree with Putin at all, but I need to understand where the guy is coming from, period. If we want, I don't want to go to nuclear war. I would like to be able to understand where he comes from. In the same thing, the Chinese interpretation of the Opium Wars and all that stuff is nuts. Like, they literally think themselves currently as the inheritors of like the Qing dynasty or something like that. But if we are to be rivals and all that stuff, I better understand how their self-conception of their national identity goes back, even if you do not agree. Like, think about what's happened since the war. We've had RT be banned. We've had like Sputnik and all these people. Many of these journalists have been expelled here from Washington for what reason? It's like, it's one of those where I, again, would much rather hear what these people have to say. I used to watch when I covered the Pentagon and the State Department. We had straight up Russian Sputnik people who were right next to us asking all kinds of BS questions. But it was actually very useful because I'd be like, oh, that's what's pissing the Kremlin off. Whenever they would ask a question or something like that, it was very useful to be able to just get in the mind. Again, you don't have to agree with somebody. That's just how I see this whole situation.
Yeah, I mean,
that is crazy.
I also would like to know from him what he would say that he would publicly accept in terms of a peace settlement.
Yeah,
at this
totally.
Point. Like, that would be really, that would be extremely important to know. All that being said, I don't think we should also harbor any illusions about why they allowed Tucker to conduct this interview, which is they certainly think it's going to be a softball and think it's going to be easy for them to manage. It's the same reason why Hillary Clinton accepts an interview from Alex Wagner at MSNBC.
Exactly.
It's the exact same reason.
Yeah.
And Tucker did kind of step in it. This is the part where, like, don't put yourself out there like, oh, I'm some brave journalist. When there are literal, actual Russian journalists who've had to flee the freaking country because they were willing to stand up to power and to expose this dude. So don't put that out there. And you can put this up on the screen. He even sort of stepped in it with the Kremlin because he said in this thing that, why is it that not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview Putin? And Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, came back and said, Mr. Carlson's not correct. In fact, there's no way he could know this, but we received numerous requests for interviews with the president all the time. And there were a number of other journalists who came out and were like, dude, I've asked to interview Putin any number of times, and of course they always reject it, and it's not an accident that they're allowing you to come in and do this interview because they think it will serve their purposes. So let's just, keep it 100 on that front as well.
He's got to sell memberships. It is what it is. I would not have said it just because it's very obvious that many people do actually want to interview Putin, people who are in the West. There was something, though, I want to comment on this, like you just said, where they're like, oh, they only agreed to it. I'm like, yeah, guess what, guys? You want to interview a VIP? That's just how it goes sometimes. It's not always, they don't have to sit with you in these things. When I would interview Trump, I played every card I could get to try and get in there. So did every other journalist who was there. That's why Hillary sits with Alex Wagner, so they can giggle over Russiagate there at the end. I'm not justifying it, but to a certain extent, guys, we're all playing the same game. Tucker said in his thing that he had requested an interview with Zelensky. What, you think Zelensky's going to sit with him? Or does Zelensky sit with NBC News? Because he knows he's going to get a slob job in the same way that he has been for the last 2 years. So at a certain point, let's all be honest about the game that we are playing.
I'm not playing that game. You're not playing that game. There's a reason why Joe
we
Biden
don't do
and Hillary...
it here.
Right, that's what I'm saying, though, is there's a reason why Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton would never sit with us. There's a reason why, Putin would not, there's a reason why many elected officials won't come on here because we won't agree. They don't expect just to get a softball interview. And kudos to the ones who are willing to. But unfortunately, it's not the norm. It's exception of people who are actually willing to come on and mix it up. And
I was going to say,
that kind
we
of
have a business model which is set up so that we can talk about stuff and we can occasionally build enough of a platform that people will come here. But if you are in the game of interviewing elected officials,
journalism,
this is how it works, period.
It's the same as access journalism here in the U.S.
Yes, exactly.
It's the exact same same thing.
Right.
I do think that there's a lot to the panic over it. I mean, I do think it's emblematic of the fact that they're so afraid that something he says, because any good propaganda is going to have some kernel of truth, that something might land, that something might actually click, change and they're already on thin ice with their whole narrative of the Ukraine conflict. Even here, they're on thin ice, let alone around the world. Nobody's ever bought that this is some grand like project of democracy and human rights and whatever. Like, no, it's never been about that. And our conduct vis-a-vis Ukraine, Russia versus Israel, Palestine really shows you how that's complete BS that we care about any of those things. So I think they feel like their narrative is already at kind of a breaking point, no pun intended, when this interview drops. And obviously it's going to get tons of eyeballs. Plenty of people who will never admit that they watch it are definitely going to watch it as well.
You know, and that's the other, I think really what they're afraid of is, listen, I don't like Putin. I'm no Putin fan or any of that. He's a smart guy. You know, he may be crazy in many respects. He's done some irrational things, but I've listened to a lot of his speeches. He's a well-read man. He's been a world leader for over 25 years, and he's very, you know, you don't become the iron ruler of Russia because you're an idiot. Like, these guys, they know who they're talking to. I've seen past interviews that he's given where he'll throw January 6th or whatever in the face of the interviewer and they like short circuit because they don't know what they're dealing with. He knows how to navigate American politics. He speaks perfect English. Like, he reads all of our news and all that. And I think they're honestly afraid that he'll say something which could convince people in a different direction. But again, even if so what? You know, if we allow Zelensky, or, you know, I would love to see Xi Jinping sit for an interview. MBS is set for interviews. You know, all of these are great. These are all good things. You know, MBS was, I believe he was challenged on Khashoggi to his face by a U.S. interviewer. I forget who it was. That's a great moment. You know, that's one of those where we should have the exact same thing, and we need to hear exactly what they think. It's helpful for us, helpful for them. You know, what if Putin makes a fool out of himself? It could be definitely helpful in terms of the Ukrainians. I'm sure they can use clips for it, even if they're super upset about it. So anyway, more information, not less. That's kind of the maxim.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.